You're live. You're live at 5. It's not 5. It's time to show off the Christmas tins again for no reason at all. Yay. I don't usually get a lot of viewers for these videos, so I'm probably going to throw in everything but the kitchen sink this time. This is not one of my rewrite videos where I tear the movie apart. I don't know how many... Nobody's going to click on this unless they're already kind of familiar with the little Whit Stillman universe, I guess. Similar to the Kevin Smith universe, I suppose. There was that weird overlap where he would use the same actors for different characters that really in Last Days of Disco was like that, but that guy was just there. It takes, it takes all kinds, right? I think, well, probably maybe Last Days of Disco was the most commercial movie. Overall, I would say Barcelona was my favorite. Metropolitan was one that took me a long time to track down because similar to some other movies, I had caught it while it was already going on cable, and it was, before you had the menus that would tell you all the information and show you all the actors and all that. This was the mid-90s. And the movie was a few years old already by the time I caught it, and it was, by luck that I found it again, kind of thing. And then got the DVD, and I have not watched it in a couple of years. So this blog that I wrote is not as fresh in my memory as I might like. But since I am constantly getting bombarded with YouTube commercials, I decided I would add my own commercials to this. 108077 car, 108077 car. They redid this one for some reason because the first kid didn't sing badly enough, so they got someone who was actually completely deaf instead of just tone deaf. Donate your car right now. Give us your car, we'll steal it out of your driveway. 108 today. Oh, I don't know if they re-recorded the music when they recast all the children too or not, but that is definitely my least favorite maybe commercial. But my favorite current commercial is the one where the wife and the husband are sitting in the kitchen, and she's ruminating over their friends or something who have had a family crisis. But we have life insurance, right? And then he just, John, we need that policy in case there's something wrong with your brakes. Huh? What's wrong with my brakes? Don't change the subject, John. Great. Yeah, I wonder who takes out, those kind of policies and gets away with it. I don't know. Here's some ideas that I do have for rewrites that I know I'm farting around before getting to the long Metropolitan thing. And there's no real cues for you to be able to skip ahead, haha, but whatever. The new idea that I just had is Meghan Markle can play Kamala in a TV movie that nobody watches. Cackles. Except Hillary might watch it, and Joe, because they put him in front of the TV and he doesn't know what it is that he's watching. Don't know if I have enough for videos for these next three. Parenthood, I think we could remake Parenthood in modern day, but we'd have to cut out almost everything in the original movie, like the scene where Jason Robards is having the cigar in the hospital. We could change that to the younger characters vaping. Instead of Tom Hulse being pursued for his gambling, which is like no big deal anymore, I guess, it would be drug dealers. I don't know if you're allowed to say drug dealers in a video, but there's not much chance this is getting monetized with my 6 viewers anyway. Yeah, and then instead of sending the kid to summer camp and learning the diarrhea song, they would just all be on their phones the whole time, watching TikTok videos and doing that kind of thing instead. Or maybe there wouldn't be any summer camp at all. But the weird girl, Rick Moranis's daughter, she would be the most normal one now. Like the other ones would be, because she'd just be like studious bookwormy girl, and the other ones would be, video zombies or whatever. I didn't, like I said, I didn't think it all the way through. I'm sure if I watched that movie again, I could come up with a whole bunch of changes to make. Brewster's Millions, except now in this era, he would be a hoarder, and he can't accept that all the rented stuff he got to blow the money has to go, and he's actually alienating his friends for other reasons than wasting the money, as they try to talk sense to him, like, no, this is rented, you have to let it go. But he's like, no, but this is my stuff, and he's got like tons of it, and he doesn't want to lose any of it. But that's only Act 1 now. That's not Act 3 with John Candy, and he almost gives it away or whatever, because the rest of the film is him turning his new mansion into a pigsty full of dead rodents and weird pets and Slurpee cups and garbage on the floor. So that could be your holiday version of updated Brewster's Millions. And I don't know if they could still be baseball guys. I don't know if baseball's popular enough. Pickleball? I don't know. Let's just go with that. Back to the Future. I know a lot of people love Back to the Future. The sequels, I don't know, hit or miss. I think if we remade Back to the Future where like it was started now and they went back to the 80s, maybe, and most of the movie would take place in the 80s, which would be more of a touchstone than the 50s for a modern audience. When they made the first one, it should have really been the early 60s more than the mid 50s anyway. Like, how old are these parents? But they do have an older sibling deal with than Marty's the youngest, so we could move some things around. But the 80s. But this time it would be more realistic, even for the 50s, probably, is that just Marty is just too goody-goody. She wants him to smoke and be the bad boy. And she, instead of Biff being the mean bully, she actually runs off with him instead of Marty or his dad. And that would be how that goes. Okay, so enough joking around. Like I said, I was going to try and be funny here. So yeah, Metropolitan. Yeah, blonde gal topless every Christmas. Dylan Hundley in the card scene. So yeah, like I said, I'm just reading here. This is more of a essay than a rewrite. Like Catcher in the Rye, this is a preppy movie that does not take place at a boarding school or college, but centers around debutantes having their coming out ball in Manhattan over the winter holidays. I didn't necessarily get all the jokes, especially the first time I saw it. So maybe somebody who's more an insider has written a more comprehensive review. Also, is this my most outfit possible? I don't know, because I just grabbed what was more holiday themed than worried about being overtly preppy or whatever, or more comprehensive review, but it was not made entirely clear that the film takes place in the late 70s or around 1980. It just kind of said, the not too distant past or whatever, which of course now 30 years after 30 years since the movie was set to when the movie was made or whatever. Well, I guess 20. So yeah, the movie was what, 89 or 90, and then the thing takes place in 79/80-ish. Which I had to piece together later when Last Days of Disco came out. So then the Whit Stillman stuff all made more sense to me. Whereas, again, when I first saw Barcelona, I know nobody pronounces it that way, but yeah, I didn't know that he was talking about he loved disco music, that it was a current thing, the disco music and all the NATO OTAN stuff. Like, that was lost on me the first time I saw that movie too. And it was a while before I knew, oh, these are the same guy. Okay. And I did not see Last Days of Disco in the theater but there was less lag time when I saw that on cable for the as opposed to the other ones. Whereas I don't think Barcelona was straight to video, and I don't know about Metropolitan, but I literally saw them all on cable. So there you go. And bought the video cassette of at least one of them. Late 70s. Okay, so I had to piece this together when disco came out. So yeah, when Ted is dancing to the disco and saying he loved disco, it's because like it wasn't like because he was being retro, it's because that was what was happening at the time. That would have been a smidge more helpful, like some plot point newspaper headline or current event, apart from what subtle, clues that may have been there, which I didn't catch, at least not the first time, or like I said, super sleuth of film. So Catcher in the Rye starts off in the boarding school, and then they leave for Christmas. So maybe the overt parallels mostly end there. But as a fan of the book, naturally, I wanted to see something of that in these characters. But apart from his goofy hunting hat, Holden is not, cottage core. Like him, the characters in Metropolitan are urbanites of the city. Holden, as a teenager, has no trouble navigating his way around the big city, and checks into hotels and sneaks into swanky bars and, does all that kind of urbanite stuff. There is a scene where he meets a friend's mom accidentally when he runs into her on the subway. I don't know why a wealthy matron would be on a subway, but this is the 40s, not the 70s or even the 90s. This is charming, perhaps, but well before the 60s. Like I said, nowadays, they wouldn't, even he wouldn't be caught dead on the subway for mostly, one reason, but it is still, it's their homeland and they know it. They belong in this world. So there's the scene in Metropolitan, of course, where Tom gets on the bus and they see him getting on the bus instead of taking a cab. And they know that one, he's from the West Side, not the Upper East Side, but two, that he's short on funds compared to the rest of their set, but they still want him as the set, not necessarily as a boyfriend yet for Audrey Roget, but definitely as a companion, a partner, brain farting the word, the chaperone. But then toward the end, the car scene in Metropolitan sort of makes fun of, these people that can't drive, this whole situation, and it even mentions it, how can we be so functional? Even though there is a subway scene right before that, which they do also take the subway in that scene, which is a little bit out of character. But we're getting ahead of the story, and it's not really crucial to my other point, except that the UBs are herbs. The characters, then, if you have not seen the film, I don't know, again, why you're watching this, if you haven't seen the film, I don't know, but Audrey Roget, she is a Jane Austen metaphor. Nick, Tom, and the guy with glasses mostly agree with Nick. The guy with glasses is, of course, the same guy who plays Ted in Barcelona, and plays two characters in Last Days of Disco, which, of course, Nick is also in both of the other two movies as the Ted's cousin and as the cocaine snorting disco club liaison, I guess, if you want to call it that. But when he gets on the bus, like I said, Nick says, there's a West Sider in our midst. And of course, this great line about he can hate the titled aristocracy, but hating the untitled aristocracy would just be self-loathing, which is, not. And then of course the great line, now that it's to my face, how do you know that, which one is the different? inspiration, the point, I guess. Yes, I derived some similar to Dead Poet Society and Catcher in the Rye. That, you know, a lot of these notes are not as fleshed out as I thought they were going to be, but that's okay. Yeah, you know, reading Catcher in the Rye in a public school kind of makes you, you know, like I said in a previous one of the book videos, I didn't know if that was supposed to like reassure us that, you know, the rich people, you know, the grass was greener and they were all just, you know, jerks cutting their fingernails in your room and, you know, that kind of thing, and, you know, stealing your girl or whatever. Or if we were, you know, supposed to aspire to something we weren't going to have because financially we weren't going to be going to prep school next year, no matter how hard we studied, or what college you might get into. If you know, I might apply to Harvard all I want, but that doesn't mean I can afford to go there, as people have said on TV before me. But is, you know, so is this supposed to make normal kids, you know, more tolerant or understanding of the weird ones? Like Holden, I guess. Did it work? I don't know. Seemingly not, mostly. I don't know. Now the students don't even read that book anymore, probably, but, you know, instead, I don't even want to go into this. Because I don't want to go, yeah, this goes off topic too much from the movie. But Catcher in the Rye doesn't center on, but it does feature a fair amount of bullies and jocks or whatever. But it's not true dark academia because, you know, there's no violent homicides in the book. It's just as abnormal psyche breakdown from some odd thing or event or whatever. But it's not called, okay, there's words missing here. It's not called Just Because Drinks and Smokes Too Much Without Eating for a Weekend. Oh, I see. It's not called something. I don't know what I meant to say there, but I think I know what I meant to say there. But I'm not going to, yeah, like I said, I'm going to labor the point because this is not about Holden Caulfield. Okay. That, when was this? I don't know, it only says 2 years ago, but I think I wrote this longer. Was affected slightly by dark academia bit earlier in the year, September, but I held off posting about this until more seasonally appropriate, which is technically true for this video also, okay. But now is just unfinished thoughts. Oh, okay, so I already knew that I was writing an unfinished idea. Okay, other Whit Stillman movies, more so than Metropolitan, which again, featuring Tom, are more fish out of water things, a little bit more. Ted, obviously, is a fish out of water almost anywhere, and more especially in this Spanish, you know, culture and foreign city. Nick, or Chris Eidman, what's he called? I forget what he's called in Barcelona. He's a fish out of water, but he doesn't care. He's not going to change his personality or his persona or anything. He represents the United States and the United States military, and he's a proud patriot, which is kind of an uncommon thing to kind of think about in that time period. After the 60s. Again, I had talked about this in my war movies videos that I did about Officer and a Gentleman and Taps, how, you know, the townies were somehow shown as being the anti-war protester type. Like, there was kind of some mixed signals going on in those films where it's like, wait, these aren't the same people that were the agitators in 1968. These are the people who are more likely to have brothers and fathers who were or are in the military. So I don't know why they, unless but in Officer and Gentleman, it's a little more, hey, you stole our girls, you know. Taps, it's a debutante ball where they come out to taunt for some reason. So again, debutante balls being kind of a theme that I don't know if anything like that really happens anymore. In the movie, they lament that this may be the last Deb season, and that could be entirely true. But obviously, some people in Washington and Manhattan and places like that do still do black and white tie things that the rest of us are not privy to. So, well, or maybe they broadcast it on TV when the Congress is going to the opera, but not so much when Audrey Roget is going to Rockefeller Plaza or whatever. So what did we learn from this? I don't know. I've been running my mouth, but like I said, that blog kind of petered out more than I expected it to, and wanted to talk about Catcher in the Rye definitely more than I wanted to. So the overall, so just ad lib. Overall, like I said, these are comedy movies. Like I said, the first time I saw it, I was very eager to understand what was going on and who were these people. And I still haven't read that much Jane Austen. Honestly, I've started a couple of them and not gotten very far before I get sidetracked. But I do love the bit where he says, I don't read that. I read literary criticism instead, and then I know what to think about it. That was in almost kind of paralleled in Sideways, right? With the nonfiction is not a waste of time, whereas fiction is, right? So how much of these movies is nonfiction? Well, it turns out, they are a farce, but they are still based on some subculture and things. So what do we learn from them except for, this and that? Last Days of Disco, like I said, being the most maybe commercially viable, the one most people will have likely seen, and deals a lot more with, well, it goes into some personal aspects because, of course, the two main characters have their rivalry, and then the girls have their dating things, and of course the guy from The Office is kind of a call back to some of the characters in Metropolitan, even more than Audrey Roget showing up at the disco club with the glasses guy. I know his name, but I can't think of it at the moment, and I don't remember all the character names from 3 movies at the moment. Like I said, I haven't watched these in a while. Whereas the newer Whit Stillman movie that came out about 10 years ago that had Greta Gerwig playing kind of the Chloe Sevigny role, it was okay. I didn't really get as much into it. I watched it once. I was like, not the only person in the theater, but I went to a matinee in Pasadena, and there was maybe more than 5 of us there, if memory serves. I've been to a couple movies where it was me and one other guy, but they were not necessarily movies that lost money, And when I saw the 4th version of Little Women, it was like me and a mom and her daughter, because again, it was a daytime showing, and that movie definitely made money, even though another Greta Gerwig, I could go off on a tirade. Okay, I will save that. But yeah, I definitely overall like the kind of dry Whit Stillman humor and all that, and I relate to his characters more than some other characters and some other things. Like I said, this isn't dark academia so much. There is a little bit of, I don't know, back and forth between the aristocracy guy. I'm just making up my own words now. Aristocracy with the Baron or whatever he is, who does want to steal their girls. That's the whole point of the thing. They only managed to, rescue Audrey, but this looks really bad, Nick. Stuff like that is just, funny no matter what. And I did know one guy in college who he would have probably really appreciated if we had ever watched these films together, and we never did. I don't remember. He might have already moved off he went out of state to college And so I didn't see him again very much after that. Yeah, he had kind of that personality, but again, his parents weren't quite as wealthy as they wanted you to think they were. So he was stuck in the public schools where he had been, bullied and all that kind of thing. And then in college, he was going to be a writer and a poet and all that kind of thing. Yeah, so we were kind of rogue scholars together was my phrase. And he always said, yes, we should be at Oxford where we could be the dunces in the corners, kind of thing. So shout out to the Oxford dunces in the crowd and the rogue scholars where you may be watching this silly nonsense. Okay, I've talked for too long and made no real point, but as usual, if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments and I can have my memory jogged and remember all the stuff about the movie that didn't show up in that blog that I thought was in that blog. And we'll get into it someday.